Hi everyone, I'm Lucy and welcome to this new episode of Threat Briefings. Today I'm joined by Renaud, our senior security analyst, to talk about how attackers use search engines like Shodan and Fofa. Hi Renaud.
Hello, Lucy. Hello.
So Renaud, can you start by telling us a bit about Shodan? What is Shodan?
Shodan is a metadata search engine, one of the first. It will scan metadata by connecting to a lot of hosts on the internet. It was one of the first, yes, created. And you search for device enumeration. You can search any, what I like to call parameters, and you can filter, and you can, because you have metadata coming from an organization, a country, or a specific port, you can you can add multiple parameters and get metadata inside. Obviously, you can also integrate with API. What you get is some tailored custom searches. For example, you can search, if I take an example for a company, I'm a hacker, I want to have information of a company named Company Services Inc. You can search for this organization, you can search for its host name, like company.net, and you can restrict company.net or hostname company to country, for example, FR for France. As a side note, as it is metadata, you can have a lot of information. Think about extracting metadata or using protocols like ICS protocols. You can interrogate and speak their language. For a more common IT protocol like UDP 137, which is name services, everyone can look and search for port 137, and you can have additional interfaces, so you can have additional IP configured on some hosts. One thing I like to with Shodan is what I call pivoting via facet analysis. A facet is typically named after a matching property and lets you see how many results there are for a given property value. In fact, for example, I'm searching for a company, I get a lot of results, and these results, what I like to do is use facet analysis to sort by SSL subject. So I have all the SSL subjects or common names for this company. So you can discover, pivot, and find, in fact, everything you want.
That sounds very easy.
Yes, it is.
And so what's the difference with Fofa then? Fofa came up lately, like we've been hearing a lot about Fofa lately. So what is Fofa?
It's kindly the same. It's more Chinese developed, search engine. Their collection capability are not well known, but they scan the internet. Maybe they are more on different collection capabilities, but the search syntax is different. You can get a lot of results also. Sometimes you don't have anything on Shodan and you have on Fofa. Depending on to who you like to give your requests. But it's also API available, so you can have integration with your own tools. You have fingerprints, and you can do also a lot of things. What I like to with Fofa is the rapidity. They are really quick to react to some vulnerabilities. For example, in the cybercrime ecosystem, I take an example like a CV in FortiSwitch 2024 48887, critical and verified password change flow in FortiSwitch. Fofabot, which is a x.com account, gives really quick a query like app FortiSwitch. You can restrict to your country you are targeting, depending on what you do, and you get instant results.
Okay. So how do they compare, and like, would it be interesting then to combine both of them to find, more
Yes,
stuff? Yeah.
absolutely. You have here comparison, and what I see most is the um, what you can get from one, and you can combine, correlate with the second one. Yeah, absolutely. You can use both. You can use a lot of other metadata search engines, and but they are also used. What is useful with these metadata search engine is they can be used for multiple domains. Today we are talking more about Black Basta, chat leagues, and other things, but these metadata search engines can be used for malware and command and control analysis, OST searchers, OST is offensive security tooling like Cobalt Strike, Rattle, and others. They are living artifacts. So if you know how to combine a search on Shodan, on FOFA, and know at a specific time this IP was exposing services related to Cobalt Strike, you can build your own threat intelligence feed. You can also pivot on threat intelligence. For example, attackers leave part of their infrastructure, and you can pivot by SSH key used, headers, yeah, a lot of parameters, selectors bring to from these metadata search engines. So the importance of search relies on the combination you do on host, domains, IP ranges, organizations, strings. Also, just by typing the name of a company, you can find any document exposed on SMB without authentication, or you can find offensive security tools. You can do, depending on your subject of interest, you can do a lot of things. But they are basically the same, but they are, the useful thing is to correlate and go one step further with the result it gives.
That makes sense. Thank you, Renaud. So, like you mentioned also, we've been diving through the leaked Black Basta chat log, and we know that Black Basta actually used Shodan and FOFA to identify their targets. So you've got an example here of the conversation they had on that topic. They were specifically targeting Jenkins. So, and why Jenkins? Because it looks like it's really useful to them, because Jenkins often runs with elevated privileges, even root privileges. It can be accessed without authentication if not secured, and its script console allows arbitrary code execution, basically remote command execution. So what can you tell us? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, in fact, Jenkins is a good example, but it's not limited to Jenkins. In fact, the ecosystem, cybercrime ecosystem, and others, depending on their objective, are doing reconnaissance, okay, with these metadata search engine. That's the more important, the key thing to get. They are doing extensive reconnaissance with one tool, two tools, and also other tools which have better collection capabilities like Zoomeye, and we will discuss about application layer information. If you debugged as a SOC analyst URL scan phishing domain, you can pivot on headers, you can pivot on a lot of parameters, content of web page, fingerprint, JOM, everything you can pivot on and find new results or track your adversaries. They are doing exactly the same, but from specific 0 day, 1 day, 0 day sometime, 1 day most of the time, weaponized exploits or tools, and they are doing extensive reconnaissance. They build lists, they find high value targets, sorry, and yeah, they are attacking them. That's basically reconnaissance, but from professionals, doing it professionally. This is not limited to metadata search engine. They also get information from companies, from business intelligence tools. They did also, which is nice, feeding social engineering with what they found, and get also credentials from info stealers. They, in fact, doing the whole spectrum about what is needed to be to get an attack quickly. This example with Jenkins speak by itself. They are trying to enumerate and exploit, but it's nowadays also generally using a lot of other critical exposed services. We can talk about generally RDP, RDWeb, which sometimes may not have MFA enabled, making the high value targets for attackers seeking initial access via leaked or weak credentials.
That seems very, very easy for them to find the information they need, right?
Yeah, this is the example here speaks by itself. Just typing product, which is the better way to search for a product. You can try to find a Jenkins by yourself, querying your selectors to identify with what you think is 100 or 90% a Jenkins, but Shodan did it for you. So if you have a paid subscription, you can search for all Jenkins. And if you pay a little bit more, you can identify vulnerabilities more easily than scanning by yourself. So it all depends on the collection capabilities. And if you know where to search, you can build a list of targets, depending if you are an attacker or if you want to protect yourself and your assets, you search for your organizations, but that's exactly the same.
In the Black Bastard chat logs, they also mention Zoomai. So what's Zoomai? Like, is it another search engine? And
yes, they are going a little bit deeper. The way they are presenting and scanning, it's in higher level at the OSI level. You know, you can have, I think, more granularity. So they are smart in scanning low level, like how many IPs are exposing a service. Then you can restrict to what is the product about the service, like a Jenkins, or what is it a router? Am I trying to exploit a Cisco router or anything? So you search for the port and you go up in the OSI level. And if you can fingerprint with more granularity, with more precision, why not? So they do not want to spend time on false results. So yes, this Zoomai search engine is really interesting because it can give you, in fact, tons of information. And if you know what to search, how to restrict, how to filter, how to correlate, you can have valuable exploitation targets. Here, the screen is just showing it's an example which not related to Black Basta and others, but yeah, there were default master password which are identifying 126 devices, and for $10 you can get the result as soon as possible. I don't know if it's working again or if it's really old. That's just an example, but yes.
I think it's still live.
Yeah, sorry.
I think it's still live. Yes.
And yeah, maybe there are a lot of others that are. So yeah, that was just an example about if there is clear text, you can be indexing it and you can get immediate results for a few dollars.
This is scary. So what do they do next? Like when attackers, for instance, obviously we're focusing on Black Bastard today, but when attackers use Shodan, Fofa, Zoomai, they're preparing for something else. Like what do they do when they found vulnerable servers, as you just talked about?
Yes, they are attacking it. They are doing it. The important thing is they are targeting, and not only them, but they are trying to target edge devices. This is paramount to understand. Not specifically this group because it's ransomware, but a lot of other groups are targeting edge devices. There are some example recently about Fortinet. When you are a ransomware group, you want to get quick access and let your pen testers do their job. So what is exposed? RD-Web. We talked about RD-Web because they do not have always MFA, but VPNs, yeah, and all the vendors, Citrix, Palo Altos, Fortinet, the usual suspects, are exploited. Okay, so they are building lists and attacking them, but as simple as that. If we can take a high-level view about what we can talk about, the edge devices is a really good example. My hypothesis is that before they were trying, some groups, more APT groups, were trying to pivot internally via them. And my hypothesis is they are not doing anymore, especially for the last Fortinet vulnerability. They are establishing persistence and credential gathering. But if you don't pivot internally or attack internally from this device, only let you get credentials and exfiltrate via a really stealth way, you are staying on the infrastructure of your victim. And it's really stealthier than it was used in the past. APT Group, Black Basta are not doing this way. They are trying to exploit and find the high value target. I talked about business intelligence. They are searching if the target or victim has money because they are they are interested by money. That's all. They want to monetize their findings. You have some example here, and yeah, they are using list of passwords. My hypothesis, I talked about edge devices, is really important, but it's because it gives you a pivot, a beachhead in your network. So exposure management is mandatory, but it's not the more speaking example with Black Basta. Here they are attacking, but doing only reconnaissance with these search engines.
And they're using also Brute Rattle, which is originally a red teaming tool, but they're using it obviously for dark purposes to brute force to support their brute force attempts, right? And move laterally.
Yes, yes. Why? Because you can, it's used by a lot of people, so you can mix in the middle. And there are probably leaked versions, like Cobalt Strike was used by APT groups to low-level cybercrime attackers. So yeah, you are melting in the flow of common attacks with these, and you can't use a specific malware only developed by you. The tactics change, and it's a choice of OPSEC from them.
Thank you, Renaud.
With Brute Rattle can be identified also with yeah, I talked about offensive security tooling. You can find maybe some traces on metadata search engine, but also in your environment. But it's way more complicated. But you want to know if the tools that are attacking you are leaving metadata, because you can use them to defend better yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. So just a little bit of, to explain you why Vectra AI matters here. Well, we've just seen how attackers find weak points using Shodan and FOFA, then brute force their way in. Now, here's where Vectra AI comes in. Vectra AI watches for things like repeated failed logins or strange account activity. If someone tries to force their way into your network, you'll get an alert right away, so you can lock things down before they get in. Vectra AI also combines what you learn from Shodan and FOFA, like which part of your network are exposed, with real-time data on what's happening inside your organization. That way you can see both the outside and inside threats in one place. This saves time, cuts down on alert overload, and helps you respond faster to serious risks. In short, Shodan and FOFA show you what's open to the outside world, and Vectra AI shows you exactly what's going on inside and how to stop an attack before it spreads. That's it for this threat briefing episode. Thank you so much, Renaud, for sharing your insights today.
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you.
Want to learn more about Brute Rattle, the notorious threat teaming and post-exploitation toolkit we just mentioned in this episode? Don't forget to subscribe to the show, as we're going to tell you everything about it in an upcoming episode. Thank you. See ya.
Thank you.